Welcome to Front Office Pros. NFL free agency is underway, and we will be here all this week to provide recaps of the biggest news each day of free agency. Before we get started, we're asking you to write in the comments what was your favorite signing/trade on day one of free agency.
Hike!
The Las Vegas Raiders have signed Jimmy Garoppolo to be their starter for next season and possibly beyond. Jimmy Garoppolo signed a 3-year deal worth $67.5 million, including $34 million guaranteed, which is on average $22.5 million per year. Joe, what is your reaction to this news?
Yeah, I mean, it's didn't really come as a surprise. This is where I expected Jimmy G to land all along. You know, being able to reunite with Josh McDaniels from their time that they spent together with the Patriots, and it was a pretty good deal money wise for them. Derek Carr, obviously their former quarterback, got a lot more with the Saints. And then, ultimately Jimmy G is just going to be a better fit for this system. He's more because he already knows the system, like I said, with the time spent in New England. And we'll see how it goes and see if it's better or worse for guys like Davante Adams and Darren Waller.
Yeah, speaking of, you mentioned the Derek Carr contract. Derek Carr ended up getting 4 years, $150 million with $100 million guaranteed, which is $37.5 million per year. And then Geno Smith, who I think is just a year older than Jimmy Garoppolo at 32, he signed 3 years, $105 million with $40 million guaranteed with $35 million a year. So you're talking about Geno at 35, Carr at 37.5, and then Jimmy G at 22.5. So it's, I think they were talking about him wanting around 25 mil a year was the report. So he got a little bit less to come with Las Vegas, but there might not have been a big enough market for him for that price to be driven up. And so as a result, he ends up getting that 22.5. But either way, all three of these quarterbacks, I think we'll have to look at the terms of each of them, but I don't think any of one of them could be there beyond 2 years. They're going to have that opportunity to get out of that contract if they want to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if Jimmy G, I know the reports and the rumors out there were him wanting to $25 million per year. I think he might have taken a little less to play for the Las Vegas Raiders and reunite with McDaniels. I find it hard to believe, Texans were supposed to be in. I think also what hurt him was, the Jets are sitting there waiting for Aaron Rodgers. They could have been, had some interest in him there. But ultimately, I think he just wanted to be with the Raiders and was willing to, go for the 22 per year, which apparently was good enough for him. And he gets to be the starting quarterback there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how well he does. He's never really been able to stay healthy. Only 2 seasons you can really say that he stayed healthy in San Francisco. From a fantasy standpoint, I think San Francisco was probably a better place than the Raiders. I mean, you've got Debo, you've got Kittle, you got Brandon Ayuk, you've got Christian McCaffrey, you've got that great offensive line. I mean, the best he ever did was the QB14 back in 2019 when he had Kittle, Debo Samuel, and Emmanuel Sanders. So it'll be interesting to see how well he does. He's never eclipsed over 4,000 yards. The most amount of touchdowns he's ever had was 27 touchdowns. So do you think that we could expect his best season in Las Vegas, with Davante Adams, Darren Waller, and Hunter Renfrow and Jacobs?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not. He's got some, he's had a lot of weapons, with the 49ers and stuff. But I mean, he hasn't had the quality of a guy like Davante Adams. But that's the thing. Like statistically wise for fantasy, I don't expect him to have a phenomenal year, but I think it's potentially just going to translate from an NFL standpoint for more wins for the Raiders than what Derek Carr was able to provide. Derek Carr was better for fantasy, but didn't always translate to wins for the Raiders. I think it could be flip-flopped with Jimmy G coming in.
Yeah, so you think ultimately Jimmy G stays at that QB2 spot in fantasy?
Yeah. I don't expect him to come in to the Raiders situation. I mean, he had a pretty good situation with the 49ers. If he wasn't doing it there, I'm not really expecting him to come in. And even with the familiarity of McDaniels, I don't know if we're just going to come in and assume that he's going to throw for 4,000 yards in this offense. I think it's still going to be pretty run heavy with Josh Jacobs, coming off of the year he had as well. So, but I think it's going to be good for the Raiders from just strictly an NFL standpoint.
All right, so we're now going to do a free agency rundown of some of the notable offensive players. Some of these will include offensive linemen, as you see on your screen, but we'll talk about the impact of these players for their teams and for fantasy football. So for the first one, offensive guard Chris Lindstrom has signed an extension with the Atlanta Falcons for 5 years, $105 million with $63 guaranteed. Then offensive tackle Jawaan Taylor, formerly with the Jacksonville Jaguars, signed with the Kansas City Chiefs for 4 years, $80 million with $60 million guaranteed. Offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, formerly of the Niners, signed with the Denver Broncos for 5 years, $87.5 million and $50 guaranteed. They also signed offensive guard Ben Powers for 4 years, $52 million, $28.5 million guaranteed. And lastly, we've got quarterback Mike White. He came from the New York Jets and is signing with the Miami Dolphins for 2 years, $16 million. Joe, what jumps out to you in this first wave of free agents that we're covering?
Yeah, what's jumping out, man, is these teams are really investing in the offensive line. You know, you had first you had the with the Falcons there and Lindstrom extending their guy with a 5-year deal over $100 million in overall contract costs, you know, so that really stood out. And then you know, I've really liked what the Broncos have done addressing the offensive line. You know, Sean Payton getting those bigger guys to help in the run game, which is ultimately going to help Russell Wilson, you know, kind of help with the resurgence hopefully this year in the Broncos offense. And then, you know, they also addressed more of that run blocking scheme with bringing in Chris Manhertz on a deal as well. So like their moves and like the forward momentum they've got with the offensive line, which really was a big problem for them last year.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting with Jawaan Taylor. He was a right tackle with Jacksonville. Now coming over to play left tackle for the Chiefs, it's already been determined that Orlando Brown is not going to come back with the team. I think they've just been priced out, and they're not looking to pay him that much money. So Taylor's coming in. Don't think that's going to change the Chiefs. I think maybe it's a downgrade, but I don't think it'll change the Chiefs' offensive efficiency or production in fantasy. I agree with you. I'm going to make a comment here on the Broncos moves. I really like what the Broncos did with offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey and offensive guard Ben Powers. You know, during the season, so many people within the media and fans were ripping on Russell Wilson, but they really weren't taking into account how porous that offensive line was. And I think they really needed that help. I think it's going to help that offense flow a lot better. I think Russ is going to have a bounce back year. It'll be interesting. We're hearing a lot about them possibly trading one of their wide receivers. Javonte Williams had that really horrible ACL injury. There's doubts of that he'll be back for, you know, fully next season. So it'll be interesting to see what the Broncos end up doing. Do they bring in another running back? Joe, I know you're a Broncos fan. I want to hear what you have to say about that before I talk about Mike White.
Yeah. You know, I'm actually in the camp of, you know, I'm hoping that they trade one of these receivers, you know, not Jerry Jeudy, but I know Sutton has been mentioned along with KJ Hamler. I mean, I'd be fine if they traded Sutton or Hamler. Sutton, they could probably get the most value other than Jeudy for. Don't really know what KJ's mark would be. I mean, he's just injury riddled, but Judy's the one guy who can constantly get open. I'd like to keep him there. Sutton and Tim Patrick are pretty similar in size and same type of receivers. So if they could move on from Sutton, save the $6 million, I'd like that. But yeah, running back, you know, I'm honestly hoping that they just give Javonte the year off. I think that'd be the best for him. We kind of saw the similar thing with J.K. Dobbins. Tried to rush the injury, didn't really work out for him. Ended up coming in at the end of the year, but he even said it himself. He didn't quite feel like he had that burst like he did. So I think, you know, go out and sign somebody in free agency, use them up for a year, and then let Javonte take the year off and come back healthy. But an interesting thing with the Chiefs and the Jawaan Taylor move is, you know, Brown had been a previous right tackle as well, and then they converted him to a left tackle. So it's kind of interesting they're trying to use that same tactic now with Taylor. Had success with Brown. We'll see if it works with Taylor.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And one thing to note as well with Powers is we've seen Sean Payton really invest in that interior offensive line. I remember, the likes of Jari Evans, they pay him a lot of money. So it really goes back to Sean Payton's philosophy. But talking about Mike White briefly here, going from the New York Jets to the Miami Dolphins, I think he played fairly well in the times that he did play for the Jets. 2 years, $16 million is quite pricey. Obviously, we saw Tua get his fifth-year option accepted, but I think this is definitely the Dolphins showing that they want an insurance policy with Mike White in the event that Tua cannot stay healthy throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely needed somebody. I mean, they had, Teddy Bridgewater just wasn't reliable health-wise for them, similar to Tua. And then, they had to roll out with the rookie quarterback, Skylar Thompson in the playoffs as well, who did pretty well in the playoffs, but other times during the season, he looked kind of shaky. So definitely a good upgrade with Mike White, and a guy who was kind of had his time and a little bit of fantasy relevance last year with the Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about him as a league winner back in the day during that stretch before he got injured with his ribs. But going over to wave 2, these are some other offensive linemen that were they were signed. So we've got offensive guard Nate Davis. He signed with the Bears for 3 years, $30 million. Offensive tackle Andre Dillard, the former first-round pick of the Eagles, signed with the Tennessee Titans for 3 years, $29 million. Offensive tackle Andrew Wiley, formerly of the Chiefs, now is going to the Commanders for 3 years, $24 million. Offensive guard Connor McGovern, the Dallas Cowboys McGovern, is going to the Buffalo Bills for 3 years, $24 million. And then lastly, center Ethan Pocic is now going to the Cleveland Browns for 3 years, $18 million. You also saw Nick Gates, formerly of the New York Giants. He also signed with the Commanders for 3 years, $18 million. Joe, anything jump off the page for you with any of these guys?
These guys, I other than Andrew Wiley, formerly of the right tackle for the Chiefs, I don't know a lot of some of these guys as well. But just again, man, here we go. Another list, and the NFL teams so far in this start of this free agent frenzy tampering period here, and they're really just teams are adjusting that offensive line and trying to solidify that, and guys are getting paid.
Yeah, I think the one that really catches my eye will be kind of interesting is Andre Dillard, the former first-round pick. We saw that the Titans moved away from Taylor Lewan as their offensive tackle. I'm not saying that Dillard is going to be the starter there, but be curious to see if he gets a crack at it. The other thing that is interesting is Connor McGovern. I think he's going to be a good replacement for Roger Saffold. He did not have a great season in Buffalo. Could help depending on who they might bring in alongside James Cook for the running back position.
Yeah, well, I think that the guy that the Titans brought in, I mean, I think he's now a lock to replace Taylor Lewan at left tackle. No,
I mean, it's possible. It's not a lot of money to dedicate to the position. That's the only thing. I don't know if they're going to have competition.
I'd be surprised. I mean, the guy was a former first rounder. I think they're just they were able to get him cheap, and I don't see why he couldn't start. But yeah, it was kind of that tweet I had sent you earlier was kind of eye-opening about the difference of how Connor McGovern did with the Cowboys versus Saffold's last season here with the Bills. That should be a hefty upgrade for them, and maybe they can get a little power run game going if they beef up that interior offensive line a little more.
Absolutely. So heading over to wave 3 of our free agents, this is our last slide for the offense. We got quarterback Jarrett Stidham going from the Raiders to the Denver Broncos for 2 years, $10 million, $5 million guaranteed. You got quarterback Case Keenum going from Buffalo to the Houston Texans for 2 years, $6.25 million, and $4 million guaranteed. Wide receiver Sterling Shepard re-signed with the Giants, coming back for a prove-it deal of 1 year, $1.165 million. Tight end Jonnu Smith was traded from the New England Patriots to the Atlanta Falcons for a 7th-round pick. And quarterback Sam Darnold signed with the 49ers for a 1-year deal. We have not seen the terms of that 1-year deal, but he is heading over to the 49ers. Joe, what is your thoughts with this group of guys?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger surprises of the day so far was kind of the 49ers bringing in Sam Darnold on that 1-year deal. I mean, now they got Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, who's coming off of that UCL surgery now, and it's just going to be interesting to see what happens there. What they do. I mean, is Brock Purdy going to be healthy for the season? Or is it time to flip over to Trey Lance? And then you got potentially Sam Darnold as a solid backup. But Jonnu Smith being traded over to the Falcons for a 7th-round pick was interesting. It'll be interesting. I think they, kind of bring him in more so to assist in the run blocking game more than anything. Arthur Smith and the familiarity he has over in his Tennessee days kind of made sense there.
Yeah, when it comes to Darnold, I was sort of surprised. He's not going to have the chance to start, I don't believe. Maybe he feels taking a year off and learning from Kyle Shanahan could be very beneficial for him. I don't really think he's going to have another crack at being a starter, though. I think he's probably meant to be a backup from here on out. But like you said, Purdy with the UCL injury, it'll be interesting to see how he recovers. And you've got Trey Lance. I thought it was just an odd signing for them. As for the Jonnu Smith news, I think your Kyle Pitts dynasty owners are probably like pulling their hair out because like, why is Jonnu Smith coming in? We want Kyle Pitts to have all the snap shares. Like you said, he's got familiarity. He's reuniting with his old offensive coordinator and Arthur Smith. I think that he will be used. I think he will probably be more used than he was in New England, which is quite shocking given all the money they gave him, and he did absolutely nothing. So I don't know. I think if this shouldn't take away from Pitts too much. If anything, it's going to take away from some of the other guys they were using before, and maybe you feel a little bit better that they're using Jonnu Smith instead of Pruitt or somebody else. As far as the other guys on this list, Joe, I mean, Shepard going back, I don't know. He's had a couple knee injuries. I don't know how much more gas he has left in the tank, and I think Stidham is an interesting backup. I think if Russell struggles, Stidham did show he could do well with the Raiders. And I think Case Keenum, he might be the starter in week 1 if they're going to let the rookie quarterback, most likely that they take with the second pick. They could have him sit for a little bit. And Keenum is back to being a starter. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll start with Sterling Shepard here. Yeah, I kind of with you. It's a kind of an underwhelming move. And for the Giants, they really got to adjust the wide receiver room. I don't know. You bring back Daniel Jones and franchise tag Barkley, but then who the heck is he going to throw the ball to here? And then Shepard, like you said, just injury riddled, never seems to be really available. So that was interesting. Case Keenum a starter, huh? I don't know. To me, they're sitting at the number 2 pick. If they use a quarterback, they're kind of in a rebuild. I think they could just roll out the rookie. But I think Jarrett Stidham is a solid move for the Broncos coming in. I mean, they had Brett Rippon as their backup for a couple of years now, and he's just kind of okay. And I definitely have a lot more confidence that Stidham can come in and, if needed with Russell getting injured or something and kind of playing well and possibly winning some games for us.
So heading over to the defensive side of the ball, these I would say are some more of the exciting contracts that were signed, a lot of money thrown around. And for those of you who are in IDP leagues, individual defensive player, there's definitely been some interesting names going to different teams. So let's start with our first wave here. We've got defensive tackle Javon Hargrave going from the Philadelphia Eagles to the San Francisco 49ers for 4 years, $80 million, $60 million guaranteed. We got linebacker Tremaine Edmunds coming from Buffalo to the Chicago Bears for 4 years, $72 million and $50 million guaranteed. Safety Jessie Bates, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals, is now going to the Atlanta Falcons for 4 years, $64 million. We believe $36 million guaranteed. And then cornerback Jamel Dean, he re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4 years, $52 million with $26 million guaranteed. And then lastly, David Onyemata, the defensive tackle from the New Orleans Saints, is reuniting with his old defensive coordinator, going to the Atlanta Falcons for 3 years, $35 million and $24.5 million guaranteed. So, Joe, what are your thoughts with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, those top 2 guys you mentioned, man, talk about getting paid. They got paid. I mean, this defensive tackle market, kicked off with Deron Payne getting paid pretty well, and then Hargrave sits in with over $20 million a year as well. But the San Francisco 49ers just continue to, invest in that defensive line, and he's in a great spot right next to Tariq Armstead. And then they also brought back Givens as well. So that D line, man, is stacked in 49ers. And then the Bears and Tremaine Edmunds, it was an interesting move in my opinion. You could have paid Roquan Smith last year. You traded him to Baltimore, and then you're just really rolling the dice. I think Edmunds is a good player, but not the great elite player that Roquan was. So interesting they go with, Tremaine Edmunds and TJ Edwards, who they got from the Eagles as well, to kind of replace Roquan instead of just giving Roquan a little more than what they paid Edmunds.
Yeah, when it comes to Hargrave, he now is the fourth highest paid defensive tackle. Like you said, we saw that Deron Payne contract at 4 years, $90 million with $60 million guaranteed. So it's telling me that the defensive tackle market is really starting to heat up. We've got the likes of Quinnen Williams, Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Wilkins, and not as much, but Ed Oliver all coming up on a new contract. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much money these guys are going to get paid, because they are definitely going to supersede what we've seen with Javon Hargrave. But, Hargrave, I think, going next to Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa, he obviously had a talented defensive line in Philadelphia as well, but he had 11 sacks last year, which I believe was a career high for him, at 60 tackles. I think he should continue that production over in San Francisco. So I think it's a great landing spot for him. And as for Tremaine Edmunds, as a Buffalo Bills fan, I am disappointed to see Edmunds go. I really had thought that the team would try to keep him. I know that we are up against the salary cap, and so we don't have a lot of money. But they could have restructured Josh Allen. They could have restructured some other guys to be able to keep him. They decided not to. I'll never really know why. I'd be curious to know from Bean's standpoint. But it's interesting. He definitely got paid. That was the largest 4-year contract for an inside linebacker in the NFL. At 69% guaranteed. That's a high level of guaranteed. I mean, he's 6'5", 250 pounds. He's 25 years old in May. So he's already played so many years in the NFL, and he's only 25 years old, which is just crazy. But, it'll be interesting to see if he ends up being more productive or not. He's a weird player, because ever since he started in his rookie year, his tackles have basically been on the decline ever since. His rookie year, he had the most tackles at 121, and he had his career low in tackles at 103. Now, he did only play 14 games, but that was only just one game less from the 121 tackles he got in 2018. So, I'm with you. I think it's kind of a head-scratching move from the Bears, because you could have just kept Roquan Smith, who I think is a far superior linebacker. So it should be interesting to see what Edmunds does. I think he should have a lot of opportunities to get tackles.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I just, the only thing I can think of is, for whatever reason, maybe Roquan, Eberflus wasn't a Roquan guy. I don't know if he just doesn't fit his system quite as well as, Edwards and Edmunds might. That's the only thing I can really think of. I mean, because the Bears had been working on Roquan's contract for a long time, but couldn't ever get to something. But then you massively give Edmunds all this money. So it's like, well, if all this money was here for Edmunds, why wasn't that there for Roquan?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know Tremaine Edmunds is really good in coverage. I can't speak to the coverage ability of Roquan Smith. But for the other deals, Jessie Bates, he was franchised by the Bengals, was really frustrated. Obviously wanted to get a big-time deal. Ends up going to the Atlanta Falcons for a quite hefty price. There's not a lot of good safeties in Atlanta. So I think he'll probably be next to Richie Grant, and he'll play that deep safety role for the Atlanta Falcons. So I think it'll be a good fit for him. And for the Bengals, they went ahead and drafted a safety from Michigan and Dax Hill to replace him, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there from the Bengals standpoint. And then, Jamel Dean, maybe not a more common name. I think he plays a little bit of nickel for them, and they really wanted him back. I guess he could have gotten more money if he went elsewhere, but decided to stay with the team. And then this David Onyemata contract, I'm very surprised. I believe he's 30 years old. He's older. He's getting 24.5 guaranteed and $35 billion for 3 years. But the Falcons, they have a ton of money to spend. It's that age-old, it's a people business. Onyemata knows the defensive coordinator. There definitely is a void at defensive tackle, opposite of Grady Jarrett. So he actually could do pretty well as far as pass rushing, or could even help Grady Jarrett even more. But that's that. What do you think, Joe, about those players?
Yeah, I think I think Atlanta's a good landing spot for Jessie Bates. Like you said, they're kind of secondary is pretty weak over there in Atlanta, so bringing a player like Jessie Bates to go over and help, and like you said, should be playing along Richie Grant unless they make other moves or draft somebody. But yeah, I think that's a good landing spot, and he should be able to be active in getting tackles. It really interests me. You said Dean could have got more money elsewhere. It kind of surprised me because he got a pretty good contract to stay, with Tampa Bay. I was kind of surprised at the amount of money that they actually gave him to stick around.
So going over to the next wave and our last wave of free agents for day one, we've got linebacker Bobby Okereke, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts. He signed with the New York Giants for 4 years, $40 million with $22 million guaranteed. Cornerback Cameron Sutton from the Pittsburgh Steelers is now with the Detroit Lions for 3 years, $33 million with $22.5 million guaranteed. Linebacker Jermaine Pratt re-signed with the Bengals for 3 years, $21 million. And then, Joe, you mentioned him. Linebacker TJ Edwards, he signed with the Bears for 3 years, $19.5 million with $7.5 million guaranteed. And then linebacker Alex Singleton re-signed with the Broncos for 3 years, $18 million with $9 million guaranteed. Some other notable defensive players that we don't have on there that also signed. You also saw Alex Anzalone re-sign with the Lions for 3 years, $18.7 million. You also saw Quincy Williams re-sign with the Jets for 3 years, $18 million. You also saw another linebacker, David Long. He signed with the Dolphins on a 2-year, $11 million deal. And then some other corners that signed. You had Patrick Peterson. He signed with the Steelers on a 2-year deal. Still waiting to hear the details on that. And cornerback Jonathan Jones, he re-signed with the Patriots on a 2-year, $19 million deal. So, Joe, of those players, what players stand out to you?
Well, of course, I'll start with Alex Singleton, man. I just, as a Broncos fan, I am absolutely ecstatic they brought this guy back. They definitely, man, talk about an upgrade in pay. I mean, he signed last year for like $1.5 million on a 1-year deal. Now he's getting a 3-year, $18 million deal, and half of it's guaranteed. So that's a significant pay increase for him. But just happy to have him back. He's an absolute tackle machine. He said he wanted to stay in Denver, play alongside Josie Jewell, and now he can get that weight room in his house that he wanted to get in Denver.
Yeah, the guy that really sticks out for me is Bobby Okereke. He's probably not a household name, but on the Indianapolis Colts, he had a breakout year this last year at 151 total tackles, and he's now going to the New York Giants team that had no linebackers. For a portion of time, they were starting Jalen Smith for a while as their main starter. They also drafted a linebacker, Micah McFadden. They also had Landon Collins and Gerard Davis, but I think Okereke is definitely the best of the bunch, and he should continue to perform from an IDP standpoint. And like you said, I mean, Singleton came in as a special teams guy, but ended up being thrust into the starting role due to injuries, and he really did well.
Yeah. That as far as the Giants go, that was a really solid signing. I know that they were looking, they were hot in the linebacker market. A lot of these guys were getting a lot of money. But for them to get Okereke, I think that's a solid move there for them. And like you said, he's going to come in right in and start.
Is that how you say it, Okereke, not Okereke?
I heard it pronounced that way. I don't know. On a broadcast, I heard Okereke, so I'll stick with it.
There you go. The other under the radar signing is that David Long signing. David Long is a great player for the Tennessee Titans. People probably don't know him. Again, he's not a household name, but I would imagine he'll probably slide right across from Jerome Baker. But that's an under the radar signing for not that much money. So I think that's a really good move. I mean, he only had 86 tackles, so it's not like over 100 or anything. But he's a good player.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a slam dunk hire for the Dolphins. Like you said, not a lot of people might not know, but us being IDP guys and paying attention to those individual defenders, I really like David Long and watching him at Tennessee, and I think it's a great move for the Dolphins. More than anything, I was just surprised Patrick Peterson ended up with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know, as we talked earlier, kind of wanted to go to a contender. Pittsburgh with a young quarterback, we'll see how they do. I mean, Tomlin figured out somehow after the mess of last year to still finish without a losing record somehow miraculously. We'll see how they improve on that. But he did say that he was looking forward to being a part of Mike Tomlin's defense and part of his team, and he respects him as a coach.
Yeah, Peterson's definitely an elder statesman. He'll be 33 years old in July. Obviously, he has been a great player over his career, being a former first-round pick, top 10 pick with the Arizona Cardinals. But I think this is getting towards the end of the road for him. I don't know what his market was, but nothing else. I think he'll definitely give a lot of his expertise. He'll be able to share that with some of the other secondary players in the Steelers. And the Steelers have a horrible secondary with those corners. So, he might be able to start.
Yeah, he said he wanted to play 2 more years, and they gave him a 2-year contract. So looks like he's going to be a Steeler the rest of the way.
So that does it for our NFL Free Agency Day 1 recap, where we went over the most prominent free agents who signed today. If you enjoyed this content, we ask you to please like this video, comment below, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also recently have joined Apple and Spotify podcasts, so follow us there as well. Like I said earlier, we're going to be doing recaps every day of the week, so make sure you tune in. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time.